If you want to continue to follow our adventure, click subscribe. So you don't miss anything, click the bell notification. Well, anybody who's followed my channel for any length of time, they're going to know that I get kind of aggravated with the idea of folks saying that there's ways around the 2-week stay limit. I am very adamant that we as nomads need to follow the rules and the laws as specified. Because if we don't, they're going to shut it all down. And I see it over and over again, shutting things down. Yet I continuously see people commenting, talking about how to violate the rules. Well, if you go do this, then you can stay longer and they're not going to come out and check on you. And we've talked about another YouTuber who was courting a ranger and said that they weren't enforcing the rules, the 2-week stay limit in Ehrenberg, Arizona. Well, a couple of years later, they started enforcing the rules. Well, that's because everybody came over and started staying longer than the 2 weeks. Well, I don't even understand that. Why are you going to be a nomad if you're just going to stay in an area for longer than the 2 weeks or the 3 weeks? Because over on the George Washington National Forest, it is 3 weeks. I would say that you're going to want to move around. That was the whole purpose of coming out here. If you're just going to stay in an area indefinitely, stretching the rules or breaking the rules, then why don't you just go get a place to live? When I say that, then everybody says, well, it's because it's so much cheaper to live in a car. No, it's not. It's not cheaper to live in a car because, you know, eventually you're going to have to replace the car. Think about this. If you live in a stick and brick, you have equity. You have a place to stay that's going to increase in value. In a car, it depreciates the minute you drive it off the lot. So you buy a car, you live in it, and eventually you have to replace the car. Well, you're not going to get more money out of the car than you spent on it. So right there in itself, you're not saving money. Now, I've talked regularly about, you know, we're in Missouri because Carolyn's daughter, Beck, has got cancer, and she's going to pass this winter. We started by staying in front of her duplex in our camper. We looked up the rules and the laws and everything of the town, and we didn't feel like that we were violating any rules. Well, the neighbor got very upset that we were parked in front of the duplex. I tried to reason with him, and he just was not going to be reasonable. He even said, well, we'll let the police figure it out. And of course, the police came out. They didn't think I did anything wrong, but he just wouldn't let it go. The neighbor wouldn't. He just wouldn't let it go. If I did anything, like run the generator, you couldn't even hear the generator from the house. You couldn't hear it. Yet he came out, walked by it, you know, he was, and people say, well, I don't care what the neighbor says, as long as you're not violating laws, you should just stay there. Well, no, you shouldn't just stay there, because I am worried that he is going to do something to my camper. Now, people say, well, okay, get a camera and install the camera, and that way, if he does do something to the camera or do something to the camper, then you got him. And, well, that doesn't replace the camper. A lot of people said that when the pop-up camper burned, that we need to put out game cameras, which I did. I mean, I have a game camera, but it doesn't stop them from doing damage to you. You still lose everything. It would be a lot better to be able to prevent somebody from burning down your camper than catching them burning down your camper. So that's why we don't stay in front of Beck's house, because even if he does get arrested, it does not make me whole again. That's on me. I'm going to have to make myself whole again. Whether insurance replaces my camper or my truck, I'd still have to build a new camper. Building a new camper right here in the middle of winter. When we go to a campground, people are not accustomed, especially in these conservation areas and different things here in Missouri, people are not accustomed to people staying in the campgrounds for the 2-week limit. Even though that the rules clearly state in the little pamphlet that we have that you can stay 2 weeks, and you see this no matter where you go. When we were down in Florida, we stayed the entire winter in a campground because in the Apalachicola National Forest, you can stay because it's hunting season. Well, we kept noticing this guy coming down, turning around, and going back. Coming down, turning around every day. About the same time, it was around 11:30, 12 o'clock. Every day he would come down, turn around, and come back. Well, when hunting season was over, we left for the required amount of time. And then later we came back to that campground. That guy was not coming down every day. Well, I don't know, we were there 2 or 3 days, and then all of a sudden there he was again. So he was not very comfortable with it. I actually think this might be the reason our camper was burned down, was because people got accustomed to our routine. And I think the guy who burned it down probably knew what our routine was. They knew that we went to town. They knew that we were going to go to town, how far town was, how much time they had. So when they saw that the truck wasn't there, they probably knew that we weren't there. So they came in, stole the food, and burned down our camper. Well, we see this everywhere we go. We were at this other campground here in Missouri, and I don't know, we were there 2, 3, 4 days, and then we saw this little red truck drive by. He waved, I waved, and it was all said and done. Well, a couple of days later, he came back down. He waved, I waved. Well, then it became daily. He started coming down daily. The waving had stopped. He wasn't interested in waving anymore. In Mississippi, we stayed at 2 different campgrounds near Lake Enid. It was quite obvious that nobody knew that you could camp at these campgrounds. The first one we stopped at, the police came down and they said, so what you doing here? Our pop-up camper was up, and I said, well, we're camping here. He says, well, I don't think you're allowed to camp here. The board on the bathroom said you could stay here 2 weeks. Clearly stated it. He said, but there's nothing I can do about it. I guess you'll just have to wait until the ranger comes down. Well, a couple days later, the ranger came down, took all our information, and said, well, have a great time. After the 2 weeks, we went to another campground just on the other side of the lake. Same thing. This girl comes down, and she is quite boisterous about the fact that nobody, she says, I've been raised here my entire life and I've never seen anybody camp here. I know that you're not allowed to camp here. And I said, yes, ma'am, you are. And she says, well, we'll see about this. And sure enough, the next day, 8 o'clock in the morning, the ranger knocked on the door, took our information, and once again said, you know, have a great stay. It's not so much are you breaking the rules. It's are you upsetting the locals. And I think this is more important than the rule breaking itself. I mean, yeah, you break the rules, they're going to start shutting down the campers. But if you're upsetting the locals are the ones going to have the voice. They're going to be around saying, wait a minute, why are all these people staying down here and they're staying here months on end? They're the ones that are going to complain to the ranger stations and the conservation officers. They're the ones going to complain, and they're the ones that are going to get the campground shut down. Thanks for watching. Click like if you like the video, and happy travels.